Adidas has finally made a good takedown model, and that's not a joke, which means this isn't a funny intro. What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the brand new Adidas X 18.2 in the Launch Energy Mode Pack colorway. This is the first takedown model in the new X lineup with a retail price of $130 US, making these $95 less expensive than the model above it, the X 18.1. Now, while these might look quite premium and pretty similar to the model above, they are quite a bit different, and we're going to talk about all those differences in today's video. While I think this is better than what we've seen lately as far as Adidas takedown models go, we're going to talk about in this video whether or not it's worth it, because at $130, you do have quite a few other options, especially for this style of boot. So if you want to learn everything there is to know, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around, watch the entire video. And if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick them up below their normal $130 retail price. If you guys do end up enjoying the video, don't forget to support it with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. Included with the boots is a box. Nothing else, just a box. Starting with the upper, you can see side by side, the X 18.2 looks a lot like the X 18.1, which of course features the top end speed mesh upper. You can see the logo right there. However, when you take a closer look at the X 18.2, you'll notice that it does not say speed mesh, and that's because this is not speed mesh. It is what they're calling an engineered mesh upper. Now, the overall design looks very similar in that you can see the mesh base layer with a fuse layer on top. It even has this little cutout right here. The main difference is not so much that mesh base layer, that's pretty much identical. The difference is the extra fuse on top and the completely different liner that makes for a material that still feels soft, it still feels flexible. I wouldn't say that this is cheap by any means. It is worthy of the $130 price tag, but it's just a lot thicker and more padded and not nearly as nice as what you'll find from the more expensive X 18.1. So while this is not going to feel cheap, it's not going to feel as thin, it's going to have more of a padded feel in general, and it's just a little bit more clunky than what you'll find from the top end X 18.1. No non-stop grip, it's pretty smooth on the surface, a little bit of texturing from the engineered mesh pattern itself, but for the most part, if you're looking for something that has a padded mesh feel to it, that is basically what you're going to get from the X 18.2 upper. Just like the X 18.1, this also features a one-piece construction to the upper, but the central portion is filled in with a neoprene material rather than a thin mesh. I wouldn't say that this feels cheap at all. I actually really like the feel, and of course it does maintain the off-centered lacing system where the laces are pushed to the medial side, which is kind of an unusual choice. They did set up the lace holes in a slightly different way, and that you can see it punctures the upper rather than kind of the edges of that mesh area like you'd find on the X 18.1, so that's a little bit different. But you'll also notice how the lace holes are kind of staggered. They're not directly in line with each other, whereas on this particular shoe, they are directly in line, which is kind of unusual, but really doesn't change the way that they feel on your feet when you tie the laces tight. This neoprene material, very thin, really no extra padding to it, just a soft, kind of spongy neoprene. And then once you do tie the laces tight, while the laces are kind of positioned in your striking area, some people don't like that. I really like the way that it feels. It wraps your foot nicely and it feels quite comfortable. The fact that this does have a one-piece construction does give the shoe a little bit more of a seamless sensation on your feet, although I will say that the tongue area definitely feels thinner than the rest of the speed mesh upper. Moving on to the rear of the shoe, this is where things get very different in comparison to the X 18.1. It still features what they are calling a claw collar, which is basically a low-cut design with an extended heel and this extended piece here at the front made out of neoprene. Is this really a collar? No, it's kind of a standard low-cut shoe with an extension piece at the back. The extension piece is completely different, and of course that flows into the liner, which is also also hugely different in comparison to that X18.1. You also notice at the back that it does not have an external heel counter. That's because this doesn't have a speed frame, but we'll get into that in just a second. Instead, you'll find a stiff internal heel counter, which pretty much does the same job, just isn't quite as light. Now you'll find that this back extension piece is definitely a lot firmer and more heavily padded versus what you'll find on the X18.1. I didn't find it to be an issue as far as discomfort and rubbing is concerned, because it does kind of go into your Achilles rather than curving away, as we've seen from previous generation X models. But as long as you have this area covered up with a sock, I didn't find that it was going to be too much of an issue as far as discomfort is concerned. If you leave that with any exposed skin right there, it is likely that it will rub and eventually lead to a blister on the back of your heel. The front part, it's really soft material. You don't really notice it at all when you're playing. Internally, it does have a synthetic suede liner that's just kind of consistently padded through the back. It doesn't have the defined bumps like you'll find on the 18.1. It's less padding technically overall, but it feels really, really good. And the fit in the heel is slightly more shallow, which is a common characteristic for a lot of Adidas takedown models, but it's not so shallow that the fit is problematic. It still feels nice and locked in once you tie everything up. The insole is removable, although it is partially glued in, so it takes a little bit of effort to pull it out. It features a mesh lining on top, and it's a single layer of this flat cut white foam. It gets the job done. It doesn't feel bad by any means at all, but just from a quality standpoint, honestly, I would expect a little bit more considering the $130 price tag. Moving on to the sole plate and stud pattern, this is where you're gonna find some pretty significant differences as well. This is not a speed frame, it's just a regular TPU plastic sole plate that's much thicker than what you'll find from the speed frame, so that's something that's immediately noticeable when you have these on feet. It's got a more solid feel underfoot, which for this style of shoe, I would actually argue is a negative thing rather than a positive thing. But unlike so many previous takedown models from the Adidas brand where the sole plates are awkwardly stiff, this does not suffer from that same problem. It's got really good flexibility, pretty well on par with what you'll find from that top end model. It's just thicker, bulkier, and not nearly as light as the speed frame of the X18.1. The stud pattern is pretty much identical. It's the exact same layout. It's the exact same shape for the studs as well. They do seem to be a tad bit shorter for whatever reason, but the traction, based on what I could tell, wasn't really all that different at all. And basically it's their speed boot right here. So you're gonna find that this is technically their most aggressive stud pattern on offer within the Adidas brand, even though every single line offers the exact same layout, with really the only variation being the stud tips, which have this kind of chevron triangular shape to them. It actually feels more aggressive than any stud pattern of this layout that I felt from the Adidas brand. So I actually quite like it. It is a minor improvement over what we had from the previous generation X boots. But basically, if you've worn an Adidas stud pattern in the last several years, you kind of know what to expect from this particular boot. Now, I'd say it's been a pretty positive review up until this point, but now we have to talk about the weight. And this is where Adidas has really slipped up, especially considering that this is a $130 speed boot. I understand it's a takedown model, and I don't expect them to be as light as the top X18.1 or X18 Plus, but the weight difference is pretty drastic. In a size 9.5 US, these guys weigh in at 9.6 ounces, which is over 2 ounces more. It's almost 2.5 ounces more than the X18.1, which is besides the point, because 9.6 ounces in 2018 is unacceptable for pretty much any boot that is labeled as a speed boot, takedown or not. These are not lightweight at all. If anything, they do have a slightly heavy feel to them for this style of shoe. So if you're looking for something that is going to feel at all lightweight on your feet, while I don't think that these are so heavy that they're going to weigh you down, they simply will not provide that lightweight feel because they just aren't that light. So as you can see, I swapped out the stock black laces for some royal blue reflective SR4U replacement laces that perfectly match the royal blue on the upper. It just gives them a little bit of a different look. You also have the little reflective strips that add that much more to the colorway as a whole. And this is a World Cup colorway, so many people are gonna have these. These make yours that much more unique. If you are interested in a pair of replacement laces for yourself, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. There'll be a little pop-up on screen, as well as a link link down below in the description. So if you're interested in a pair, be sure to go ahead and check that out. On feet, the X18.2 feels pretty good. The speed mesh upper is soft, it's flexible, it's got lots of padding to it, and it does soften up and become more flexible as you wear them in. The overall shape and volume of the shoe is a slightly more narrow and slightly lower volume versus what you're gonna find from the higher end X18.1, which some people might argue is better. The one thing that isn't better though is the fit in the heel. It definitely has a shallower fit, not to the point where your heel feels like it's gonna fall out or it's slipping or anything like that, but it just doesn't feel quite as good as what you'll find from that top end model. A very common characteristic of so many Adidas takedown models. I'm not sure why it's the case, but it's not so bad in this particular situation that it's detrimental to the fit. Width-wise, I would say that these are going to be suitable for most people. Yes, it's a speed boot, but it's not particularly narrow by any means at all. Certainly wider than what you'll find from the Mercurial line, if that's something that you're wondering about. Although, if you have really wide feet, I still wouldn't say that these are a great option for you, but they will fit most people. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing a size 9.5 US, which is my typical size. My feet are about a 9.25, and the fit and the length is pretty much perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, the X18.2 has a lot of good qualities about it. I think the speed mesh upper feels really good. The shoe as a whole fits well, not quite as well as the top end model, but it comes close enough. It's comfortable to wear. It's got a good sole plate. It's got a good stud pattern. But the one downfall here, in my opinion, is the fact that this is a speed boot that weighs over 9 ounces. That is unacceptable in 2018. That's really unacceptable for any speed boot from any time at all. So why you would spend $130 on these versus $120 on a Nike Mercurial Vapor 12 Pro that is, I would argue, better quality as far as upper is concerned. It's gonna offer better traction and it's gonna be a whole heck of a lot lighter. That I don't really know. I think if you're looking for a takedown model or at least value for money speed boot, you have a much better option that's actually cheaper in the Mercurial Vapor 12 Pro versus the X18.2. This is a solid boot, but if you're expecting it to have that speed boot feel, it simply does not provide that. Anyways, guys, that is it for my review. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. If you guys are interested in a pair of these for yourself, again, you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $130 retail price. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down below in the comments and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.